You start right now. Like, you should be ordering your gifts off Amazon and all that stuff right now.
But I waited until you.
By the way, Amazon, if you want to sponsor my channel, just give me a shout out. Okay, CO24. Finding a new amount after an increase. This is where, like when you go someplace and you buy something and it says like, 99-cent menu, dollar menu, or whatever, but it ends up costing like $1.07 because of tax, okay? Or if something is marked up or there's a tip on something, this is how that is calculated, okay? And so this is finding a new amount after an increase, and we're typically talking about taxes, tips, things like that, okay? Here are some situations you may be familiar with having to do with percentages. Last week you ran 20 miles, and you're on a training program, so this week you want to increase that distance by 15%. How many miles will you run this week? Okay, if that slime is going to become a problem, then we'll put it away. Okay, you buy an iPod off eBay for $125, and they'll resell it with a 30% markup. Do you know what an iPod is?
Yes.
That's still a thing? Okay, good.
Not really.
Eventually, kids will come through and like, I don't even know what this is. So, why do we have to touch each other all the time? Just stop touching. Your bowling score was 180, and your goal is to raise it by 45%. What score did you set as your goal? Okay, so we're taking an original amount and we're increasing it by a certain percentage. And our job is to find the new amount after the increase, right? And you might be thinking, oh, well, don't I just add 20 and 15, right? Well, no, because you're not increasing 20 by 15. You're increasing 20 by 15%. And that 15% refers to the original 20. So there are two methods I'm going to show you. What is this? Stop it. Stop doing that. There's two methods I'm going to show you for how to solve this. One of them is finding the amount of the increase first, and the second one is finding the new total directly. You only need to know how to do one of them. Okay? You will have a calculator for this objective and anything after this on the test, but just so you are aware of that. Okay? So the first method is to find the amount of increase first. Right? You're running 20 miles. You want to increase that by 15%. How many more miles are you going to run? And so what we need to figure out, here's the question, what is 15% of 20? Right? That's how much we're going to be increasing by. We have to figure out what is 15% of 20. And in PO23, we learned 3 different methods we could use to answer this. Find it 15% of 20, right? This question comes straight out of PO23. So whichever method you want to use, go ahead, fractions, percentages, multiplication method, go ahead and calculate 15% of 20. If you have to flip back a page, take a look, feel free, but one of the methods from PO23, find 15% of 20. Do you have an answer or a question? It is. It is. I'll ask you how you found that. Just a little bit. All right, Layla asked if the answer is 3, and she's correct. Layla, which method did you use to find that? Okay, 1.5 times 2. So she used a variation of the multiplication method. Like we talked about, if it doesn't end in a 0, you kind of have to stick a decimal point in here. Okay? And then you're taking 1.5 times 2, and that gives you 3. Did anyone use the fraction method? Okay, if you use the fraction method, you're first converting this to a percentage, right? And then setting up a proportion. 15%, 15 over 100 is the same as what over 20. Now this one works out well because it's got a nice scale factor here. We divide by 5 to get from 100 down to 20. Divide by 5 here, and 15 divided by 5 equals 3. Okay? So either way you slice it, 15% of 20 equals 3. And this is the amount of the increase. Remember, this method, we're finding the amount of the increase first. So if we're increasing our 20 miles by 3, how many miles are we going to be running next week? 23. And that would be the answer. Okay? So again, notice that we did not just add 15 to 20, okay, because we're not increasing by 15 miles, we're increasing by 15%, which means you have to calculate what 15% of 20 is. That ends up being 3, so that gets added on to the 20, and 23 is our final answer. Okay? Now, to find the new total directly, it saves some steps, but it's a formula. This can go on a help sheet, even though it's a Mr. Effie pencil here. The formula can go on a help sheet. The formula to find the new total directly is your original times 100% plus the percent of increase. Okay? The original amount times 100% plus the percent of increase. So just plugging these things in here, what number would go in for our original? What do we start with? 20, right? And then we're multiplying that by 100% plus, what's our percent of increase? What's our percent of increase? 15. Right? Our percent of increase is 15. It ends up being an increase of 3 miles, but our percent of increase is 15%. So this becomes 20 times 100% plus 15% is 115%. And how would you put that into a calculator? 20 times 115%. Madeline?
20 times 1.15.
Excellent. You convert this 115% to a decimal, and you would type in 20 times 1.15. If you do that, guess what you're going to get? 23. Okay? And the reason why this works is because 115% is bigger than 100%, right? It's greater than 1. So by multiplying by this 1, it gives you the original amount back, because 20 times 1 would still be at 20. And then multiplying by that 0.15 brings you to the final answer directly. Okay? So, I mean, you've got options. If you really like the converting and the multiplication method, maybe finding the amount of the increase first is the better option. If you're just like, just give me something to plug numbers into, okay? Then maybe the formula. It looks like it's a lot of steps. It's really not, just because I wrote everything out very specifically. You can mentally add 100% and 15%, and then mentally convert that to a decimal. There might not be any work that you really need to show here, okay, when you're using the formula, if you understand what it is. All right, next one. You buy an iPod for $125, and you want to resell it for a markup of 30%. Find the amount of increase first. We want to know what is 30% of 125. Again, we can't just add 30 and 125. You're not increasing by $30. You're increasing by 30%. Okay? So using the fraction method here, 30% is 30 over 100. We want to know how much that is out of 125. Not a great scale factor to get from 100 to 125 here, so what's the other method we can use to solve a proportion? Yeah. Well, so you could use the multiplication method here also, but going the proportion route, if there's no scale factor, what can we use to solve a proportion? What works every single time? You keep this in your back pocket, you can solve any proportion that ever comes your way. Good. Cross products, which is 30 times 125, divided by 100. Okay? And what does that get you? 175? That seems a little high. 3,750, right? But then divide that by 100. 37.5. And what is that 37.5? I'm writing it as 0.50 because it's a price. What does that represent? That 37.5. That's how much it's going up, right? Not what you're selling it for. You're selling it for the original 125 plus the $37.50 markup, right? You're going to try and sell this thing for $162.50. Okay? Going with the new total directly, and again, you probably don't need all of this work written out, but it's the original times 100% plus 30%. I guess I could have filled the original in first. 125 times what? What's 100% plus 30%? 130%. How are you going to multiply that in a calculator? 125 times 130%. Yeah, 125 times 1.3 or 1.30. And guess what you're going to get? $162.50, exactly. Okay? Most of this work you could do in your head if you know where the pieces go. You've got the original, that's given to you, no calculation there. The 100% is part of the formula. You're adding 30% onto that. In this case, it's 30% because that's the markup, right? And 130%, you can convert that in your head probably to a decimal. And so 125 times 1.3 is going to get you that total directly. Okay. The last one, Boolean score of 180, and you want to increase by 45%. Using either method, calculate that out. Boolean score of 180, you want to increase that by 45%. Using either method, the formula or the new total directly. Start you out here. The question that you're asking is what is 45% of 180? Right? You can use proportion for that. You can use multiplication method for that. That's back to PO23 there. This one here, you got that formula. You've got the original amount, your original score, times 100% plus how much you want to increase that score by. Okay? So I'll give some people some time. Yeah, you don't need to know them both. Pick your favorite. This is where you get to choose which one you like better, which one makes a little more sense. I recommend having a calculator out for this one. If you don't have a calculator, I recommend getting one for the test because your neighbor, if you're planning to always borrow from someone, they'll need it like for the test, and they probably don't want to waste, not be able to answer questions because you're using theirs. So have your own. Callie, yes?
Do you stop in the name of glitter?
Don't like glitter. Glitter's the worst.
It's fun.
Glitter is the worst.
Then how come it says it on your computer?
Yeah, that's how I roll. Who has an answer they're confident in here? An answer they're confident in. Sawyer?
got 72 for 45.
Increasing 180 by 45%, you got 72 as the amount of the increase?
Not the whole thing, though. I just got.
Just the amount of the increase? I got something different. What'd you do, Sawyer?
I did 4 times 18.
Okay, close. Using that multiplication method, because this doesn't end in a 0, we have to stick that decimal point in there and take 4.5 times 18. So try that. That'll set you on the right track. Who's got an answer they're confident in? A final answer. Ava?
80 or 81.
81 for the increase. Okay, so you did this method here.
I did that one, and then I also did
The formula?
Like the fraction.
Oh, okay. So you got 81 for the increase,
Yeah.
right? So that 81 needs to be added to the 180 to get your final answer, right? Because if your original score is 180 and you want to increase it by 45%, you have to add that increase onto it, and we get, Claire, 261. That is the correct answer, okay? Did anyone do the second method with the formula? No? Madeline? Melanie? Melanie, what did you put into your calculator?
180 times 1.45.
Yeah, and where that 1.45 comes from is that you are taking that 100% and adding the percent of increase to it, right? You want to take that 100%, you want to increase it by 45%, so now you have 180 times 145%, which in your calculator is 180 times 1.45. Convert that 145% to a decimal, okay? And that gives you 261 directly. So 261 is the final answer. Job well done. Job well done. Okay? Yeah. 7.2. What'd you do? 1.80 times 4. In this method here. Okay, so you ignore the 5, which is a problem. Okay, so if you took 1.80 times 45, then you would have gotten the correct answer. Okay. All right. Your homework, your practice for tomorrow is I would like you to look at this chart right here. The initial bill is $23 and the tip is 10%, which means that you are increasing 23 by 10%. So if you are using, I'll do the work for Bart down here. If you are using the first method, your question is, what is 10% of 23, right? And then you set up a proportion, you find that amount, you add it to it, whatever else. If you're using the formula, you're taking your original amount times 100% plus 10%, and you're calculating that, okay? So either method can be used, you don't need to use them both, but for tomorrow, just this chart right here, okay? Just this chart right here. This is your original amount, this initial bill, okay? And this is the percent of increase here. Right? Come it up.
Do you have to do the one on the bottom?
Nope, just this chart. These 5 questions for tomorrow. That is it. Questions on this? No? Don't forget Con is also due tonight. Okay, so if you've not done that yet, then
Wait,
get on that.
Did we play the number game, or did not everyone play?
None of them got their homework today. Multiple offenders today. Multiple offenders. I'm gonna stop recording. We can go over some of these if you still have questions. I see some kind of blank stares out there. And so we can talk about which method you prefer and what you want to do. But just these 5 for tomorrow. That's time F.